She dreamed of motherhood, so why did she secretly hate her own daughter? What I uncovered shattered both our families. I used to think my sister-in-law, Vanessa, was just a strict parent. She never really hugged her daughter, Emma. Never praised her. She was always correcting her posture, her tone, her clothes, like Emma was some porcelain doll constantly failing inspection. It bothered me, but I figured that was just her way. Some parents are just cold. Emma's 12 now. Quiet, careful, always scanning the room before speaking, like she's trying to guess what version of herself is safest. My brother, Caleb, didn't notice, or didn't want to. He worked a lot. I was the one who picked Emma up from school when Vanessa was busy. I was the one she'd sit silently beside on the couch, watching cartoons but flinching every time she laughed too loud. Then one night, Emma said something that changed everything. We were baking cookies in my kitchen. She looked up at me with those big, haunted eyes and asked, "Do you think I look like Mommy?" I smiled and said, "A little." "Why?" She hesitated. "She says I'm a reminder." I froze. A reminder of what? I asked gently. She shrugged, like it didn't matter. Of something bad she did. She never says what. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Something was deeply wrong. I started asking questions. I talked to my mother, casually at first. Then less casually. I asked about Vanessa's pregnancy, how things were back then. That's when Mom looked at me strangely and said, "Vanessa was never supposed to keep the baby." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" She sighed. She was young. Just 19. She said it was an accident and she didn't want to be a mother. But then, suddenly, she kept the baby and told us Caleb was the father. My blood ran cold. Because Caleb didn't even meet Vanessa until Emma was already 2 months old. And I knew, in that moment, that everything about our family was a lie that I didn't want to believe it at first. Maybe Mom was misremembering. Maybe the dates got mixed up. But the more I thought about it, the more it all made sense. Caleb falling for a single mom didn't fit the story we'd always been told. But he's a fixer, always has been. Vanessa must have known that. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Emma. That sweet, quiet kid who never complained, who practically tiptoed through life. I thought about the way Vanessa looked at her. Like she was a ghost. I needed answers. So I went to Vanessa. I waited until Caleb was out of town on a business trip and asked if I could come by and see Emma. Vanessa opened the door like she'd just bitten into a lemon. She didn't want me there. That was clear. But I forced my smile and said I just wanted to hang out with my niece. Once Emma was in her room, I cornered Vanessa in the kitchen. "I talked to Mom," I said. She barely blinked. "She told me you were already pregnant when you met Caleb." Her jaw clenched, but she didn't deny it. "She said you were going to give the baby up." Vanessa finally looked at me. Her eyes were hollow. I changed my mind. "Why?" She didn't answer right away. Just poured herself a glass of water, hands trembling. "Because I thought if I kept her, maybe I could fix what I did." "What did you do?" I whispered. Silence. Then she said it, barely audible. "She's not Caleb's." I stared at her. "I know. But who is the father?" Vanessa's face went pale. "It doesn't matter." "The hell it doesn't." I snapped. "Emma deserves to know. Caleb deserves to know." Vanessa looked me straight in the eye. "If you tell Caleb the truth, he'll leave her. He won't be able to handle it. And Emma will grow up with nothing." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "Emma already has nothing. You treat her like a stain you can't scrub out. That girl deserves to be loved. To be wanted." Vanessa didn't reply. But I'd already made up my mind. I was going to tell Caleb everything. Even if it meant burning the whole house down. Caleb came back from his trip on a Sunday evening. I asked him to meet me for coffee the next morning, just the two of us. I told him it was serious. He looked tired when he walked into the cafe, like the weight of the world had already been pressing on him. I felt sick, but I had to do it. For Emma. I need to tell you something, I began, trying to keep my voice even. It's about Emma. And Vanessa. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing. I told him everything, what Mom had said, what Vanessa admitted, how the timeline never made sense. And then I said the words I knew would break him, Emma isn't your daughter. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. She lied to you, Caleb. From the beginning. You married her thinking you were a dad from day one. But you weren't. She used your loyalty, your need to protect people. He sat back like I'd punched him in the chest. His hands went to his face, fingers laced over his mouth. Then he whispered, "Who's the real father?" I shook my head. She wouldn't tell me. He stared at the table for a long time. When he finally looked up, his eyes were bloodshot. "I don't care," he said. I blinked. What? I don't care who her biological father is. Emma is mine. She always has been. But what Vanessa did, his voice cracked. That's unforgivable. There it was. The fracture. I'm going to confront her, he said, standing up. No, I said quickly. Emma has to be somewhere else when you do. She doesn't deserve to see this fall apart in front of her. Caleb nodded, slowly. Can she stay with you tonight? Of course. That evening, I picked Emma up under the pretense of a sleepover. She smiled when she saw me, genuine, warm. The kind of smile kids reserve for people they feel safe with. It made me ache. She had no idea that by the time she went home, her entire life would be different. And I wasn't done yet. Because I still didn't know the identity of her real father. But I was going to find out. Even if it meant digging into secrets that had been buried for over a decade. ChatGPT, Emma fell asleep on my couch that night curled up with her stuffed penguin and the remote in her hand. I watched her chest rise and fall, thinking about how much she'd been through without even knowing it. And I knew, I owed her the truth. The next day, Caleb called me. I talked to her, he said. She didn't even cry. Just sat there and said, I told you if you ever found out, you'd leave. Like she planned for this moment. Like she knew it would come. Are you okay? I asked. No. But I'm clear now. I'm taking Emma. I don't care what Vanessa says. That woman can't raise her anymore. Do you think she'll fight it? She can try. But I've got 14 years of being her father. I'll win. I knew he was right. But I also knew Vanessa still had a grip on one final secret, who Emma's real father was. And I had a suspicion it was someone we all knew. I started going through old photos, digging into Vanessa's old Facebook posts, back before she scrubbed everything to look like the perfect mom. That's when I noticed something strange. A guy named Mark Russo kept popping up in pictures with her. Always close. Always at parties. Then, nothing. He disappeared right before Emma was born. I messaged him. Didn't think he'd reply. But he did, within an hour. Me, hey, sorry to reach out randomly. Were you close with Vanessa Langston? Mark, wow. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Me, did you guys ever date? Mark, for a while, yeah. But she cut me off when she got pregnant. Wouldn't even talk to me. My heart sank. Me, do you think Emma could be yours? Mark, she what? Wait. You're telling me Vanessa had the baby? Me, yes. She's 14 now. Mark, oh my God. He asked for a photo. I sent him one, Emma smiling on her birthday last year. His response came seconds later. Mark, Jesus Christ. That's my mother's face. My hands shook. I had found him. Emma's real father. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. There was no mistaking Mark's reaction. He wasn't fishing for drama, he was stunned. Shaken. Like a man who had just realized he missed the first 14 years of his child's life. We agreed to meet the next day. Neutral ground. A public park. I brought a printed photo of Emma, just in case. When I saw him in person, I almost gasped. Emma had his nose. His posture. The same slightly awkward smile. I had no idea, he said, over and over. She told me she lost the baby. She said it was too much, that she couldn't go through with it. Then she blocked me. Vanished. She gave the baby a new father, I said bitterly. My brother. Mark sat in silence for a moment. Does Emma know? No. And I'm not sure when or how to tell her. But she deserves the truth. And Caleb deserves to know who you are too. He nodded. I'm not trying to rip her away from him. I want to know her. If she wants that. I believed him. Mark wasn't a threat, he was just another victim of Vanessa's manipulation. Later that day, I told Caleb everything. He was quiet at first, then asked to see the messages. The photo. When he saw Mark's face, he didn't flinch. Yeah, he said softly. That's her jawline. I expected anger. Rage. But instead, Caleb just leaned back and exhaled. I want what's best for her, he said. If Mark wants to be in her life, we'll do it the right way. Slowly. Carefully. But Vanessa's done. She doesn't get another chance. And just like that, the decision was made. Emma would finally get the truth. The family she deserved. The love she'd been denied. Even if the truth tore everything else apart, that we waited a few days before telling Emma. Caleb wanted to speak with a counselor first, to do it right, not recklessly. He was terrified of breaking her. I admired him for that. We decided to tell her together. Caleb, Mark, and me. At my house. Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, legs swinging, unaware that her world was about to tilt. I made her hot cocoa the way she liked it, extra marshmallows, and sat beside her while Caleb took the seat across. Sweetheart, Caleb began, his voice gentle but tight, we want to tell you something very important. Something about your past. About where you came from. Emma's smile faltered. She looked from him to me, confused, then to Mark, whom she hadn't been introduced to yet. Her eyes narrowed slightly, studying his face. Caleb reached for her hand. I want you to know that I love you. That nothing in the world will ever change that. Okay? She nodded slowly. Caleb looked at me. I gave a tiny nod. Emma, I said softly, you know how you've always felt, like something wasn't quite right? Like there was a piece missing. She glanced down. Her voice was barely a whisper. Yeah. Well, I continued, the truth is. Caleb isn't your biological dad. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She just stared at him, like she was trying to process a sentence in a language she didn't speak. But I've been your real dad in every way that matters, Caleb said, tears rising in his eyes. Since the day you were born. I held you. I bathed you. I took you to school. Nothing about that changes. Emma blinked. Her voice cracked. Then, who is? Mark stepped forward, gently. Hi, Emma. My name is Mark. And I think I might be your biological father. Silence. She looked at him for a long time, her face blank. Then her lip trembled. But why didn't you want me? That shattered him. Mark knelt beside her chair. I did want you. I just didn't know you existed. Your mom told me something very different. I never stopped wondering about you. Tears finally fell from her eyes. Caleb stood up, came around the table, and pulled her into his arms. No matter what happens, you're still my daughter. Always. She sobbed into his shirt. And I knew we had ripped off a bandage that had been covering a wound for too long. But now, finally, it could start to heal. The days that followed were delicate. Emma wasn't angry, at least, not outwardly. But something shifted in her. She stopped walking on eggshells. She stopped apologizing for existing. Vanessa, on the other hand, was a storm waiting to explode. She showed up at my house 3 days later, uninvited. Pounding on the door like she had every right. When I opened it, she didn't even wait for me to speak. You had no right, she hissed, eyes wild. None of this was your business. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. It became my business the moment you turned that child into your personal scapegoat. She was mine. Vanessa snapped. She's not a possession, Vanessa. She's a human being. A child you've emotionally neglected for 14 years. I protected her, she said through gritted teeth. From what? The truth? From the man who actually wanted to be in her life? From knowing she's worth love? Her lip curled. You ruined everything. No, I said, stepping in closer. You did that the moment you decided to use a child as a cover story for your guilt. She looked like she wanted to slap me. Instead, she straightened her spine and snarled, "You'll regret this." I didn't respond. I just opened the door and stepped back inside. Later that night, Caleb told me she had tried to block him from taking Emma permanently. But the damage was done. He'd already filed for full custody. With a mountain of emotional abuse and Vanessa's deception exposed, the courts weren't on her side. Mark had agreed to move slowly, respectfully. He wasn't trying to replace Caleb. Just be part of Emma's life. They started with short visits. Letters. Ice cream outings with me or Caleb nearby. And Emma started to smile more. She laughed freely now. Hugged without flinching. She was becoming someone new, or maybe someone she was always meant to be. It didn't happen overnight. But day by day, she was healing. And our broken family? It was starting to reshape itself into something stronger. Something honest. Something real. Emma started asking questions, real questions. Not the quiet, hesitant ones she used to whisper like secrets. These were bold. Honest. Why did Mom hate me? Did she ever want me? Do I have to see her again? Caleb and I never sugarcoated the truth. We told her that Vanessa was hurt, once. That she made horrible choices out of fear, guilt, and selfishness. But none of it was Emma's fault. Not her birth. Not the lies. Not the pain. Mark became a fixture. He never overstepped. Never pushed. He just showed up, consistently, calmly. He'd text her little jokes. Send postcards from weekend trips. Once he brought her a book about astronomy because she mentioned liking stars when she was 7. She devoured it in a week. One night, while we were all sitting on my porch watching the sky, she turned to Mark and said, "You can call me your daughter now. If you want." He choked up. Didn't even try to hide it. "Only if you'll call me Dad." She smiled. That smile was different. It wasn't just happiness. It was peace. Meanwhile, Vanessa tried to fight the custody battle, but she was unraveling. In court, she ranted about betrayal, lies, and conspiracies. Her own lawyer looked exhausted. The judge saw through it all. He granted Caleb full legal custody within the month. Vanessa was given supervised visitation, only if Emma agreed to it. She didn't. At least, not right away. I'm not ready, she told Caleb. I might never be. And he respected that. We all did. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about healing. Rebuilding. Giving a child, who had been unloved by the woman who birthed her, an entire village of people who would never make her feel small again. And for the first time, she believed it. She believed we believed in her. Emma started journaling. She told me it helped her untangle the knots in her head. Sometimes, she'd let me read what she wrote. Other times, she'd just leave the notebook on the table like an offering. I never pushed, just thanked her for trusting me. One entry hit me so hard I had to excuse myself to cry in the bathroom. I used to think love meant being quiet enough to not make someone mad. Now I think love means you can be loud, and silly, and sad, and they still stay. That's when I knew the damage Vanessa had done wasn't just on the surface. Emma had internalized her mother's coldness. She'd twisted herself into something unrecognizable just to survive. But now, she was unfolding. Becoming. She joined a photography club at school. Started painting. Even asked to redecorate her room with stars and fairy lights and a giant map of constellations. She laughed when Caleb tried to help and broke the step stool. Mark brought her an old Polaroid camera from his attic, and she lit up like it was Christmas. We were sitting on the back deck one afternoon when she asked, "Do you think people can change?" I looked at her. Some can. Some don't want to. She nodded slowly, then said, "I think Mom loved me, in a broken way. But I don't want to grow up loving people like that. I want to love the way you do." I couldn't answer right away. Because I was choking on tears. This girl, this brave, brilliant girl, had every reason to shut the world out. And instead, she was opening herself wider. Risking trust. Daring to believe in good things. And I realized something in that moment. I hadn't just helped save her. She was saving me, too. Spring came early that year. Emma had just turned 15, and for her birthday, Caleb, Mark, and I pooled together to get her a telescope. The look on her face when she unwrapped it, pure awe. She didn't even speak, just hugged all three of us at once, squeezing like she never wanted to let go. That night, we drove out to the lake just past the city. No light pollution. Just trees, water, and the sky. Emma set up the telescope herself, confident and calm. She pointed it toward Saturn, then made us all take turns looking. "That little ring," she said, beaming. "It's not just science. It's poetry." Mark chuckled. I never thought I'd have a daughter who talked like Carl Sagan. Emma turned and grinned. "You're just lucky." It was the first time she called herself his daughter out loud. And it wasn't awkward. It wasn't forced. It was right. As the stars moved across the sky, Caleb leaned beside me and whispered, "I used to think this was the worst thing that ever happened to me." What was? Vanessa. The lie. The betrayal. But now I think maybe, it led us all to something better. I looked at Emma through the telescope's reflection. Her face glowing with starlight. "She's the best thing that ever happened to us," I said. Back home, she hung her favorite Polaroids across her wall, us at the lake, her with her telescope, Caleb trying to cook and nearly setting off the fire alarm. There was even one of Mark sitting awkwardly on the porch swing, holding a mug she'd painted for him that said, "World's second best dad." The first? Always Caleb. We were messy. Complicated. Woven together by secrets, pain, and truth. But we were a family. A real one. And in the end, that's all Emma ever wanted. Vanessa reached out again in early summer. A handwritten letter this time, no calls, no uninvited door pounding. Just a plain envelope in the mailbox with Emma's name written in shaky cursive. Emma held it for a long time before opening it. She sat on the edge of her bed, turning it over in her hands like it might explode. "Do you want me to read it first?" I asked gently. She shook her head. I have to. She opened it slowly and read in silence. Her expression didn't shift much, just a subtle tightening around her eyes. When she finished, she folded it neatly and placed it beside her. She said she's sorry, Emma said. She said she didn't know how to love me right. That every time she looked at me, she saw what she lost. I stayed quiet, letting her work through it. She said she wants to see me. That she's in therapy now. Trying to be better. I nodded. How do you feel about that? Emma looked out the window. I don't know. Part of me wants to scream at her. Another part wants to believe she means it. You don't have to decide right now, I said. Or ever. That's your choice. She smiled faintly. Caleb said almost the same thing. Of course he did. In the end, she wrote Vanessa back. Just a few lines. No promises. No invitations. Thank you for the letter. I'm still figuring out what I need. I hope you are too. It was mature beyond her years. Graceful, even. But it wasn't submission. It was a boundary. Emma was no longer that timid little girl hoping to be enough. She knew she was. And she wasn't going to let anyone, especially her mother, take that from her again. Emma stood on stage in a soft blue dress, her Polaroid camera hanging from her neck like armor. It was her school's end-of-year showcase, and she'd been chosen to speak. Not just for her class, but as the closing voice of the entire event. She cleared her throat. Nervous, yes, but grounded. My name is Emma, she began, voice steady. And for a long time, I thought I was invisible. She paused, scanning the crowd. People saw my face, but not me. I learned to be small. To be quiet. To never need too much. Caleb gripped my hand. Mark sat 2 seats over, frozen, his chest visibly rising and falling with emotion. But things changed, she continued. I learned that families aren't just who we're born to, they're who show up. Who listen. Who stay when it gets hard. I found my family in the people who refused to let me disappear. She smiled softly. They gave me a camera. A telescope. A voice. And now. I'm learning how to use all 3. Thunderous applause. She stepped down from the stage and walked straight into our arms. Caleb kissed her forehead. Mark wrapped her in a hug. I stood there in awe, trying not to cry like a child. Later that night, we sat under the stars again. Just us. No drama. No secrets. Just peace. I think I'm ready to see her, Emma said quietly. Just once. To let her see who I became without her. Caleb didn't flinch. We'll be right there when you do. She nodded, then leaned back and stared at the night sky. You know what I realized? What's that? I asked. She didn't ruin me, Emma said. She gave me the beginning of my story. But I get to write the rest. And just like that, the girl who had once been a shadow became the brightest star in her own sky.